I think the first step that's the hardest for people is getting that pre-approval.
And that, I was going to say, that's where the relationship that we talked about in the beginning of this comes into play, is because if you haven't built that kind of, I just need to be honest with you, like, you're not going to get that. And we can search all day, but realistically, when you go to get that pre-approval at 8% interest, the monthly payment, whatever you had in your head, is not that. Right. And I just need to let you know, so we're not wasting each other's time. And I think that's where, if you can build that, like I said, it's dating. If you can build that relationship over time, it's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen right when Zillow calls you. You don't just say that, right? But over time, if you can build that like transparency relationship, then you can let them know, hey, like, there's other strategies that we can use. And I'm very knowledgeable of that. I know how the market's reacting. I know, like you said, it's very house specific on what we can do with that, and strategies to enter and exit, right? And so I can present all of that. But the first step is that pre-approval. And a lot of people don't want to take that because I think there's an obligation, right?
Well, and I think sometimes people, I mean, we're talking about the place where they live and their finances. I mean, these are very personal and very touchy situations. So sometimes I will really work in tandem with whoever the lender is, just to give them that part. And I'll even tell my clients, you know, I just know that you can afford this property via the lender, but I don't have all the specifics about, you know, I don't need to know about all your money, you know, because sometimes they want that barrier in between, and that's okay. And so let the lender figure out those numbers, but let's make sure that we have the funds to be able to do it, because, you know, you don't want to break someone's heart. They fall in love with the property and they can't afford it.
Absolutely.
Right. So we want to show them properties that will work for them. And it's just like, you know, sometimes, I don't know if you ever look, but I look at houses all the time, but I'm looking in like other states just to kind of see what houses look like. And they might look wonderful, but like, you don't know what the neighborhood's like because you've never been there. Yeah. And so I feel like sometimes clients have that a little bit of delusional thing when it comes to price too, and what their payments are going to be. Because they're like, oh, 700,000, I can do that. But do they really know what that payment's going to be? So I think that's why it's important to say, hey, the payment's going to be about this much. How do you feel about that? You know, is this going to work for you? Because it is like math on paper, but it's also an emotional feeling for them too. Are you okay paying this much? Yeah. Like if you already pay that for rent, cool, we're good, right? But if you're like, if this is like $2,000 more than what you're paying, maybe you have to make some lifestyle changes. And do you want this house more than you want to go out to dinner every night? Yeah. You know, and then they can decide.
And even, or I don't know, I would love to hear how you think on this, but it's kind of like almost like playing devil's advocate. I don't always try and preach finding your dream home. Okay. Like, this just as honest as I can be, because I think you can easily grow out of a home. And I think it's more important to find a starter home than a dream home, because, you know, you might build a family, you might break your knee and now you can't walk the stairs. And like, dream home to me is like, things change, life changes. So instead of trying to find that dream home, and if it doesn't come, then you've been waiting 10 years and you went through 5 different market cycles and now you're priced out of the market. I don't try and preach that. How do you feel about that? I try and necessarily preach, well, why do you want this type of home first? Like, what's important to you, as we discussed? And then what other strategies can we get? Like, what if you bought this home? Okay, your kid is moving, going to college in 2 years. Why do you need a dream home, right? You know, like for the kids. Like, what if we look, you know, a year and a half from now for a starter or a downsize home where you're an empty nester, right? Like, just try and present different strategies to them on the table.
Absolutely.
How do you feel about that?
So one of the things, and I always chuckle when someone's like, oh, this is my forever home, or this isn't my forever home. And sometimes I'll flat out tell them, your forever home isn't till you die. You know, like because we have this idea of what that forever home looks like, and our lives change, like you said. I mean, and maybe like your dream house would be, you know, an island in the kitchen and this, that, like whatever your things are, but we change our mind. Yeah. You know, so I was just chatting with a client the other day, and she is going on like off on her own and buying a property. And she's like, I don't know, because I don't know if I want to stay in this house for 5 years. And then maybe, you know, if I get married, then we move into a different house. And I'm like, you don't have to stay in it for 5 years,
Yeah.
right? I want you to have the comfort to be able to know you are making an investment. And whether that's a 2-year investment or 10-year investment, you have to maybe open up a little bit too to see that.
Absolutely.
The longer you stay in a property, the more money ultimately you're usually going to make. If we look at the scale of like, that's just what happens, right?
Yeah.
The longer you own a property, the more value it has. But at the same time, don't limit yourself to, I have to stay for this amount of time. But I do encourage people to stay for 2 years for capital gains purposes. But other than that, I mean, life changes.
Yeah.
And I was just talking with clients this morning and they're like, well, we might want to move out of state once family dynamics change, but we don't really like the city we're living in. So maybe for a couple years, but we feel like it's silly to just move for a few years. And I said, you don't like your house now. You want to move to somewhere else.
Yeah.
And who knows what's going to happen in 2 years. So why don't you enjoy where you're
Your
living?
family dynamic might change again. Like,
Yeah, so it's okay to make those kind of decisions. And it's like you're just moving your investment from one place to the other.
Yeah.
You're still living in California. Prices are still going to do what they're going to do, whether you're in your house that you hate now or than the one that you love.
Yeah. I just like that because it's like even homeowners now, like